Long before he became the most powerful man in stock car racing, Bill France was a mechanic at the local Buick dealership, founded by J. Saxton Lloyd. Years later, Sax Lloyd became an important political ally of his former employee, and you may remember that name, Lloyd. It is directly connected to the signature feature of Big Bill's Dream Track.
The track design was pretty monumental, really. You had a semi-high bank track in Darlington. It was considered a super speedway. It was about 1.25 miles. Low banks, maybe a semi-bank track, but to come up with something 31 degrees was just phenomenal.
The turns were banked so high. No track since the board track days had banks of that degree or height, and it was an amazing sight. It really was.
The board tracks were all the rage back in the teens and the 20s. These were high-bank, super-fast speedways up to 2 miles in length, and you could see the cars. It wasn't a flat track. You didn't lose the cars in the turn or on the backstretch or whatever. The cars were up in the air and going fast, and there was never a bad seat in the entire place, and that stuck in Bill France's mind.
Ford had a similar design, tri-oval, for their testing ground there, and they had done all of the engineering work to solve the very touchy problem of how you do a transition between a 31-degree bank and a 17-degree bank. And that's where Charlie got the engineering data.
So Bill France had the vision and the money. Charlie Moneypenny had the engineering scoop. But perhaps most important, Moneypenny also had a critical piece of local knowledge, the key to the Speedway's construction.
This section of Florida has ball-bearing sand. It's very difficult to get road base, but Moneypenny, who had designed the old Naval Air Station, he knew that there was a deep deposit of marl, which is like clay, that you don't find in Florida in too many locations. And he said that you could mine the marl and use the marl for the banks.
Thus, we connect the dots. They dug up marl from the infield to build the high banks. The resulting hole in the ground filled up with water and created a lake, Lake Lloyd. That's right, named for Bill France's former employer and later political ally, the local Buick dealer, J. Saxton Lloyd. Moving that marl, creating those high banks, kicked the construction project into high gear.
Many occasions, my dad, myself, and Bill toured the racetrack. They fought the elements big time. But boy, I tell you, once they got that lake dug and got some fill in there, it started sprouting up.
Boy, I just couldn't believe a big, that thing looked huge with just dirt being piled up and the big sweeping turns. Man, this was something else.
The next big challenge, paving on a 31-degree angle. The machines had to be tethered to keep them from falling over or sliding down the hill. The original grandstand seated just 25,000, but wisely, pilings were put in place for future expansion. Just in time for its debut race, this unprecedented construction project was complete. Big Bill's dream, a high bank reality.
They broke ground in November of '57, and they ran the first race in February of '59. So it took just a little over a year to build, which was amazing. No one had ever done anything on that scale before.
For a 21-year-old kid, I mean, it was like a whole different world. When you drove in, you could not believe it was as big as what it was.
If you can imagine running around on short tracks in Virginia and Carolina and South Carolina, and then go down there the first time you go down there and see this monstrous track, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, how big this track is.
One word, wow. Believe me, everybody felt that way, but we loved it. It was built so nice and banked and all that. You know, they did a good job.
But there were still big questions. What kind of racing would a high-bank tri-oval produce? How would stock cars behave at the sustained speeds this unusual configuration made possible?
The IndyCar drivers they had in Indianapolis, and they always looked at us like we were taxi drivers or something. And so I notice now all these Indy drivers want to drive these taxi cabs, don't they?
I think everybody realized that it was going to be something completely different than what we'd ever had. It was a racetrack where you could run wide open, even though we wasn't running but 130 or 40 mile an hour. At that 1959, that was fast.
These guys were the astronauts of the day. They didn't know what to expect. They were getting into uncharted territory. They didn't know if the tires were going to hold up. They didn't know anything about aerodynamics. He was approached by the fellow that owned the Daytona Beach Kennel Club, the dog racing track there in Daytona. And he said, "Ray, I'd like you to build a car for the Daytona 500. And Ray said, "Sure, no problem." He says, "But I need it for this year's Daytona 500. And Ray said, "Well, that means I'll have to build the car in 7 days."
So they said, well, whatever you charge, we'll double it. So we all got together and worked, and I worked day and night.
And I said, well, I'll come down there and drive it if I can get the car. I figured Ray had been building motors for me for my moonshine cars, and they were very fast and very durable, so I figured, well, he's a good engine builder.
Because the Chevys were down on power to the Pontiacs, Ray and Junior knew their liquor hauling success would be hard to duplicate on the track. Then in practice, Junior made a discovery.
I would wait on a Pontiac, and there's about 5 of them there, was way faster than any other car that was there. So I'd grab one of them things, and I could stay with them, and they wouldn't, one of them could get away from me once I got to them.
In the race, Junior put his discovery to work.
He said, "Well, heck, I think I'm onto something here." So he said, "I just dropped in on the back of the Pontiacs," and he said, "I followed them up through the field, just kind of hopscotching from car to car. Before you knew it, I was up near the front in a car that wasn't supposed to be there."
I didn't think that little bitty engine, little 348 engine, was going to do anything.
Junior is often credited with discovering the Daytona draft. More accurately, I think he was the first to put it to its full potential. Still, he seemed destined to finish second until leader Bobby Johns hit trouble inside 10 laps to go.
The car was performing so good, and when something performs so good, I'm not looking for those strange noises. I'm not looking for something to happen, because it's like it's been doing all day long, just motoring down the racetrack.
Nobody realized what the wind would do to a back window on a race car, especially on those Pontiacs that had a huge back window on them.
It was a situation where the race was ours to lose, and we lost it. Coming off of 2, the rear window in the Pontiac I had just absolutely disintegrated, and when it did, the air rushing through the back turned my helmet down over my face, and I'm looping her out down the back straightaway. In the meanwhile, the car is getting closer to Lake Lloyd.
Well, Johns managed to stay out of the lake, but Junior swept past to win and makes no bones about how he did it.
I didn't outrun nobody. I outdrafted everybody that was there. That's exactly how I wanted. And it was a great car. It just didn't have the horsepower, to run with the other cars.
Johns rebounded from his late race spin to finish second, his Pontiac built by the legendary Smokey Unick.
Smokey called me a number of years back. He said, losing the Daytona 500 didn't mean so much at the time, but he said, it means a lot now. And I said, Smokey, it means something to me every day.